The rich aroma of roasted turkey filled the kitchen. A large platter of appetizers, perfectly ironed tablecloths, and place cards with each guest's name were set out. All of it had been prepared by me, Allison. 9 months pregnant, I had planned and executed this entire Christmas party on my own. My mother, Barbara, and my younger sister, Lauren, were lounging in the living room, chatting away with their phones in hand. Not once had they offered to help, not even a word of thanks. "Wait, Allison did all this? Damn, you're doing way too much." Lauren laughed, but her tone held no respect, no concern. "Allison's always been the thoughtful one, right?" My mother, Barbara, chimed in playfully. "She's always been like that. Tries to do everything herself, then burns out and blames the world." I turned away, pretending to smile, while something heavy pressed deep inside my chest. I was the one supporting this household now. My father used to provide for both my mother and sister, but after his death several years ago, it was my stable income as an accountant that kept things afloat. Every time, Barbara would call in tears, "I'm not feeling well, I can't afford a doctor." Sure, I knew there was some inheritance and probably support programs out there. But I still pitied her for losing Dad. And once I started helping my mother, Lauren naturally started relying on me too. She'd dropped out of college and decided to become an influencer, but did little beyond scrolling social media. Even so, whenever she guilt-tripped me with teary eyes, I couldn't bring myself to turn her away. Even now, nothing had changed. As I laid the forks on the table, a sudden wave of weakness nearly made my knees buckle. I carefully eased into a chair, trying not to draw attention. I wasn't feeling well, but if I said anything, they'd just laugh and call me dramatic. That's when I heard it. "What do you think you're doing? That's Lauren's seat, isn't it?" Barbara's sharp voice rang out from the living room. "Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you get to be lazy. Get up, Allison." All eyes turned to me. There was a 28-year-old pregnant woman being scolded by her mother in front of relatives and family friends. The air turned cold. "Mom, I was just taking a short break." No excuses. Barbara stormed over and grabbed my arm, trying to yank me up. A sharp pain shot through me. I gasped involuntarily. But then a quiet voice came from the front door. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" Everyone turned. There stood Dorothy manning my grandmother, who was supposed to be too unwell to attend. With a cane in hand, she slowly stepped inside. The entire room froze in stunned silence. Her presence shifted the atmosphere completely. Yelling at a pregnant woman, how shameful. Have you ever even thought about how much your daughter sacrifices to support this family? Allison, you're not some servant in this house. Barbara flinched for a moment but quickly looked away, trying to laugh it off. "Oh, please. I'm just disciplining her. You spoil her and she'll walk all over us." "No, the one who's walking all over someone is you." Dorothy's voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge that cut through any room for pity. Family means showing gratitude to those who support you, not using your daughter for convenience and then looking down on her. That's not family. The looks from the guests began to shift. Where once I had felt the cold stares of, "Well, she's the oldest, it's expected." Now those stares were turning toward Barbara and Lauren. Lauren opened her mouth to speak, but said nothing. She bit her lip and looked down. Dorothy walked over to me and gently pulled out the chair beside mine. She leaned in and whispered, "You've given enough. Now it's time to live for yourself and your child." Tears welled up in my eyes. I had never asked for help, not once. I believed that if I bore the burden in silence, things would work out. But now, with just a few words, my grandmother had started to melt the ice lodged deep within me. I didn't know how much she knew about the financial situation, but she must have seen enough to know I needed saving. "Thank you, Grandma." My voice trembled as I said it, but I didn't sit back down just yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone from my pocket and opened an app in silence. There it was, a detailed history of years of financial support, living expenses for my mother, medical bills, all of it. No more. I whispered to myself as I began canceling each scheduled transfer one by one. With every transaction complete message that flashed across the screen, I felt something loosen in my chest. Once I'd finished, I finally sat down in a chair in my own room. "It's over." The words didn't come out, but I felt them tremble in my throat. A confirmation email arrived from the bank. The money flow was completely shut down. They would never siphon from my wallet again. It was quiet. The noise of the house, the noise of the past, all of it faded. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was closer to a prayer finally answered. No one will ask for my approval or my sacrifice anymore. From that moment on, I was no longer anyone's daughter or sister or personal ATM. I was a woman reclaiming her own life. Several years ago, things were completely different. I worked for a major audit firm, and I loved my job. My boyfriend, Paul, and I often talked about the future. On weekends, we toured small apartments together, saying, "Maybe this is where we'll start our life." Paul Hansen. I was just 24 then, still chasing dreams of a career and a family. Paul was the opposite of me, outgoing, sociable, full of charm. It didn't take long for us to fall for each other. I remember on our first date, he said, "I love how you always try to take on everything yourself." I blushed, unsure how to respond, but I was a little happy to hear it. Back then, I was still paying most of my family's bills, too afraid to ask anyone for help. So Paul's quiet presence, his warmth, it felt like salvation to me. 1 year later, Paul proposed. In a small restaurant, he held out a modest ring and said, "Will you build a life with me?" In that moment, there was no hesitation in my heart. I said yes, and as he pulled me into his arms, I could clearly see the outline of a happy future. But my family wouldn't allow it. From the start, my mother, Barbara, was against it. "Does that guy even have any chance of a decent career?" Their interference was exhausting, but the real problem wasn't my family. I had a dream of my own, a dream I wasn't ready to give up. Paul kept saying, "I don't care what your family thinks or how busy you are with work. I'm on your side. We can build everything from scratch." But even his kindness began to feel like a burden. One day, I told him quietly, "I'm sorry. I've thought about it a lot, and I think I need to focus on my career right now." Paul was silent for a moment, then simply replied, "Okay." No anger, no sadness, just a gentle smile. Even his kindness couldn't sway the resolve I had built. I never stopped liking Paul. In fact, part of me still wished him happiness. But back then, I wanted to choose a life I built for myself, not one where someone else sheltered me. 3 months after the proposal, we gradually drifted apart, and eventually, we ended things. Paul would never have been happy with someone like me, who only wanted to focus on her work. After the breakup, I buried myself in my career like I was locking away my emotions. I was in the office by 7 a.m. every morning, working late into the night, drowning in spreadsheets and deadlines. I got promoted. I became the head of the client management team faster than any of my peers, and my performance was stellar. But once I came home, reality waited for me. Mom's hospital bill went up again. "You make the most money, Allison. It's only fair, right? At first, I thought of it as temporary support. But slowly, the entire household grew dependent on me. Lauren, who had dropped out of college, made a bit of money posting videos, but she never contributed to the household. Then came the breaking point. "We're thinking of moving in with you." Barbara dropped that on me the day after I signed the lease for my long-awaited new apartment. "Wait, what? You mean all of you?" I couldn't help but ask. Barbara replied like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're moving into a bigger place, aren't you? If you can afford the rent, then having us there shouldn't be a problem. We're family, after all. Besides, you won't be able to raise that baby on your own, will you?" Something inside me cracked when I heard those words. Before I could respond, Lauren jumped in. Yay. I called dibs on the loft room. Before I could even open my mouth, the dream I had fought so hard for was being rewritten into their new base of operations. From then on, my life was a series of compromises. Cleaning up after dinner, managing the finances. Everything was pushed onto me with just one phrase: "You're the eldest, aren't you?" They would say, "We're grateful," but the gratitude was shallow. The exploitation, constant. I covered Mom's medical bills and living expenses. On paper, she was listed as a senior citizen living alone. In reality, I was living with her, supporting her. The reason we kept it separate was because Barbara knew she'd get more aid that way. Every document was carefully filed to maintain that illusion. And if I spoke up, I risked being accused of coercing my own family into dependence. I was fully aware of the contradictions. And I began to quietly plan my escape. I knew I couldn't go on like this. Now, I'm 9 months pregnant. After the wedding plans with Paul fell through, I found out I was expecting. I gave in to Barbara's voice saying, "You can't raise a baby on your own," and let myself be bound to this house once again. That day as well, I looked at my swollen belly in the mirror and silently tried to push myself forward. Is this really okay? Is this the life I want? No one could answer that question for me. The only one who could was me. That night, even after I went back to my room, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of the vanity, staring blankly into the dark mirror. My body ached, my belly felt tight, my feet were swollen, my back was sore. But the worst pain was in my heart. Lauren's careless laughter. Barbara's cold expression. In that moment, I realized clearly and painfully that I wasn't truly needed as family. My eyes burned, but I didn't want to cry. I wouldn't shed another tear for them. A few unread messages from Wendy lit up my phone on the nightstand. "How are you holding up? Don't push yourself too hard. Call me if you need anything, okay?" The tension in my shoulders eased for the first time in weeks. And then a small movement stirred in my belly. "Oh." I gasped softly and gently placed a hand on it. "For this child, I have to stand up. I need to go somewhere where no one looks down on me. Where I'm not ruled by fear or control." The resolve settled quietly, but firmly. The morning after the party, an odd silence hung over the Reynolds household. Barbara had posted a video of last night on TikTok. The title read, "A Mother's Lament, Abandoned by Her Daughter on Christmas." The video showed my mother sitting alone in the corner of the room, crafted like a tragic heroine in some scripted drama. I wondered what people would think when they saw this. Anyone who watched that one-sided video would no doubt blame the daughter. That's the kind of performance it was. And that's exactly what Barbara wanted. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. The night before, my grandmother Dorothy had changed everything with a single outburst. Yelling at a pregnant woman, "How shameful! Allison, you're not some servant in this house." That outburst ignited a long-suppressed fire inside me. When I woke up the next morning, I looked in the mirror with a clarity that hadn't been there before. I'm not a slave. I'm not an ATM. The words left my mouth, not in anger, but with a calm, unwavering resolve. My conversation with Dorothy from the night before echoed in my mind. You've given enough. Now, it's time to live for yourself and your child. Those words from my grandmother made me feel loved for the very first time. I picked up my phone and messaged Wendy. She had been my closest friend since college, an independent woman who ran her own online education platform. To me, she was the one person I could fully trust. Please, I really need to talk. The message was marked as read almost instantly. Anytime. Want to come over now? And just like that, one of the heavy weights on my chest lifted. As I got dressed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. Tired eyes and a 9-month belly, but a steady, determined look in my gaze. No one controls me anymore. I whispered it to my reflection, and this time I truly meant it. Wendy's home was the one place where I could breathe. Can't believe we're seeing each other like this, but I'm so glad you came. I've been worried sick. She opened the door with a knowing smile, then welcomed me inside. There was herbal tea and homemade biscuits waiting on the table, and that small act of care made my shoulders drop, just a little. Can I tell you everything? Wendy nodded. That was all the permission I needed. And I told her. Everything I had never dared say out loud. How I paid all the bills. Covered my mother's hospital fees. Paid for my sister's tuition. How Barbara and Lauren leaned on me silently demanding, never asking. How I couldn't say yes to Paul, not because I didn't love him, but because I was too trapped. How the word family had become an excuse for exploitation. Wendy didn't interrupt once. She simply held my hand and listened. By the time I finished, tears spilled down my cheeks. I'm not wrong, am I? No, you're not wrong. In fact, I'm amazed you held on this long. You're not alone anymore. Her words soaked into my heart like rain falling on parched ground. Later that day, Wendy introduced me to a friend of hers, a lawyer well-versed in family and financial law. Together, we calmly went over everything, documents, evidence, and how to apply for the support I deserved. This isn't just an emotional matter. You've been mistreated economically, legally. We'll make this right. I nodded. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming the life I should have always had. That night, I lay down on Wendy's couch and gently rested a hand on my belly. I want to be the kind of mother this child can be proud of. That quiet but unshakable resolve burned inside me. The next morning, sunlight peeked through the curtains, brushing softly against my face. But there was no peace in my expression. Even after a few days at Wendy's, my mind never stopped racing. Even with the baby's movements reminding me of the life I carried, I couldn't fully rest. The humiliation at the party, Barbara and Lauren's cold stares, Dorothy's piercing words, and the slow collapse of my life's foundation. Everything circled through my thoughts like a storm. I knew I had made the right choice. But the years of learned self-sacrifice fought hard against my newfound freedom. When I left that house with nothing but a small bag in hand, my legs trembled slightly. But I couldn't let anyone see that. I can't breathe. By the time I reached the bottom of the long staircase, I was already out of breath. My body was heavy. I could feel the baby shifting, trying to find space. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Just a little longer, okay? I whispered it in my mind, taking one step at a time. The walk to the station had never felt so long. Even though I'd tied my sneakers tight, they felt loose somehow. And worst of all, people's stares felt ice cold. No one was going to help me. That truth cut deep. By the time I reached Wendy's station, my body felt like lead. But when I rang her doorbell, I was standing. When I heard her voice welcome back, tears silently traced down my cheeks. There was someone who would welcome me. I told myself, I'm going to be okay. When I opened my laptop, the video was still up. The one Barbara had posted on TikTok the day after the Christmas party. A mother's lament, abandoned by her daughter on Christmas. There she was on the screen, sitting dramatically in the corner, like a tragic character from a stage play. I didn't want to trouble my pregnant daughter, so I kept my distance. Even if people misunderstand me, that's okay. I did it for her. The staged sniffles, the carefully chosen lighting, the on-screen captions highlighting my mother's tears. One by one, comments began flooding in. So moving. How could her daughter be so cruel? If you can't even love your own mother, how can you be a mother yourself? The video quickly surpassed 100,000 views. Donations, unsolicited but sympathetic, began pouring in. This is a lie. I whispered to myself. I opened file after file with steady fingers. Bank transfers, payment records for hospital bills, even photos of Barbara dining at restaurants and shopping at malls during her so-called recovery. Credit card statements, time-stamped receipts. The truth was clearly documented. Wendy said, "If you're going to reveal the truth, now's the time. You're not the daughter of a victim. She's pretending to be a victimized mother, but in reality, it's the opposite." I nodded silently, then placed my hands on the keyboard and began typing with quiet resolve. "You've got this, Allison. This is just the beginning." Wendy placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I glanced down at my round belly. For this child, I have to change. Not just as a mother, but as a woman taking the first step toward a new life. I slowly opened the social media post editor. Until now, social media had been nothing more than a stage for my mother's lies. But not today. Today it would be a platform for truth, not emotion, but fact. This is not a rebuttal to my mother. This is a record of the truth. Beneath the caption, I uploaded PDFs of transfer receipts, proof of paid medical bills, and photos from Barbara's vacations posted during her so-called convalescence, including receipts for luxury makeup purchases. While pregnant, I supported my family in ways most will never see. I want people to know what that looked like. Within 10 minutes, the comments started flooding in. Wait, so what's the real story? This evidence is too clear to deny. She did all this at 9 months pregnant? The mom in that video seems completely different now. Even locals began chiming in. These documents are real, same format we use at my company. She's the one who does corporate finance support around here. She's trusted. The narrative shifted instantly. Barbara's carefully crafted victim role began to unravel publicly and loudly. When I hit post, I exhaled deeply. Whatever happened next, my heart was remarkably calm. This wasn't revenge. It was a step toward reclaiming myself and building a real life with the child I carried. Wendy brought over coffee and sat beside me. That was impressive. There's no way they'll stay quiet after this. They don't need to respond. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm not going back. Wendy nodded, quietly patting my shoulder. My baby shifted gently inside me, as if whispering, "Well done." I placed a hand on my belly and closed my eyes. We'll start a proper life together, just the two of us. No more control. No more fear. That night, hashtags began trending. What real family love looks like. Dawn texploit pregnant women for sympathy. The next day, Barbara's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her hospital called to say her prescriptions were now on hold. The pharmacy account had been suspended. Even her rent, electricity, and gas were now under someone else's name. I had reviewed the lease and contacted the property manager. "I'd like to terminate the contract at the end of next month," I said it calmly. When all the logistics were in place, Wendy helped me move into a new home. It was time to start fresh with my baby. A few days later, Barbara and Lauren learned about it not from me, but from the property manager. The lease ends next month. For the first time, they realized how precarious their situation really was. They scrambled to reach me, but by then I'd changed my number and email. There was no direct line to me anymore. Faced with the reality of losing their home, Barbara yelled in frustration. Lauren, through tears, whispered, "How did it come to this?" But this was my quiet answer to the years I had spent shouldering a life that never belonged to me. Everything in their lives came to a halt. Their inquiries to local offices led nowhere. Then one day, they received a formal notice. All previous support has been terminated. Lauren now lived in fear of public opinion. A clip from the Christmas party had surfaced online. Pregnant sister forced to give up her seat by her own mom and sister. Treated like a servant. The video spread rapidly, and with it came waves of backlash. How could they treat a pregnant woman like that? This sister is a total leech. Wait, they were living off her income? Her follower count plummeted. All brand deals were canceled. Every new pitch was met with, "It's not the right image for us right now." One evening, the Reynolds family found themselves all together in the living room again. But the warmth was gone. "Mom, were we really that awful?" Barbara paused, lowering her newspaper. "Awful? That's a bit much. But everything we did, it was like repaying kindness with cruelty." Barbara bit her lip. They had lived off my income and felt entitled to it. They had given nothing and taken everything. And now they were being forced to confront that truth. Then the doorbell rang. It was a delivery. Inside the box was a simple card and a letter. "To whom it may concern, I'm spending quiet days with my son in our new home. There's been a lot to reflect on, but I feel calm now. I don't intend to dwell on the past anymore. But I've made my choice. I won't be coming back. The life where I constantly sacrifice myself ends here." In a quiet hospital room, I closed my eyes. After a long fight, I held a tiny life in my arms. The warm weight of a newborn. "Welcome to the world, Lucas." Tears slipped down my cheeks. When I whispered his name, he opened his mouth and reached for my finger. No matter how lonely I had been, this moment made it all worth it. After being discharged, I moved into a small apartment on the west side of town. It wasn't new, but the sunlight filled the room. Simple furniture. A few houseplants. In Lucas's little crib were picture books I had once loved as a child. Then, one day, a letter arrived. A pale gray envelope and handwriting I instantly recognized. To Allison. Just below the name, written in careful script, were the words, "Would it be wrong of me to dream that one day it could be the three of us? You, me, and Lucas?" As I finished reading, I pressed the envelope gently to my chest. What came to mind was the gentle future we once dreamed of together, the day we talked about renting a place, just the two of us. Could I go back? Stand beside Paul again? The time that had stopped for the two of us on that day was now beginning to move again, this time as three.